Okay, so back to Proverbs chapter 4. Last time we looked at the idea of guarding your heart and how important it is to recognize that what we put into our life is going to come out of us eventually. It's going to shape who we are. And today we're going to look at watching your tongue. So let's look at the text real quick from Proverbs 4, verse 24 says, "Put away from you crooked speech and put devious talk far from you." So this idea of being very aware of guarding against just letting whatever we want to come out of our mouths, that we should pay attention to crooked speech or bad speech or yucky speech, and we should put devious talk away, plotting kind of wanting to do harm to people through our words. So let's talk about that today, what that might look like in our lives and in your lives today. What are some things that we really want to guard against when we say we want to guard our tongue? Well, we want to definitely guard against slander, speaking lies about other people. Now, maybe you've been on the receiving end of that. You know how hurtful that can be when people are saying things of you that are totally not true. Definitely on social media, that can happen at a lot faster rate now and can get around to lots of people in just a couple clicks of a button. Slander is not something that we want to have in our lives as God-honoring people. In addition to that, and most commonly, gossip. Gossip is such a difficult element to relationships. And for whatever reason in our human nature, we all are just prone to want to gossip. And how we define that here is talking negatively about someone behind their back. That you, in maybe making a connection or bonding with one friend, you're trashing on another. And that gossip is such a damaging thing that happens. And it doesn't matter if you're 12 or 16 or 40. It's an element of human nature that gossip is just something that we seem to want to do. But yet gossip is so not God honoring. It's something that we really need to guard against if we're trying to honor God with our lives. And again, you may be saying yes and amen to that because you've been on the receiving end of people gossiping about you. And no one likes to feel like when you're not a part of the group or you miss out on a sleepover with someone that everybody is talking behind your back. So gossip's definitely something to avoid. And then the last one to highlight is cursing. A lot of times I think we think using foul language or colorful phrases is not that big of a deal. But the reality is that's still not coming from a place that honors God. And so we want to watch and guard against cursing. That's not something that we should be doing in our daily lives. So you might be saying, okay, well, I get to what I'm supposed to guard against, but what do we do instead? What are some positive things then that we could focus on as far as in watching our tongue and guarding what we say? Well, I think a good thing practically is focus on giving compliments to people. I don't know about you, but when people give me a compliment, that feels good, especially on a day when you're feeling a little beaten down. It's nice to hear people say, I really like this about you, or I respect this about you. So even though people in our lives, whether it's your friends or your parents or your annoying siblings, sure, there's going to be things that are disappointing and frustrating about people in our lives. But if you could take some time to think, with my mouth and my words, I can either do damage or I can do good. To focus on how could I compliment so-and-so instead of being critical of them. Because again, you never know what that could mean to them. And it also will help you to not focus on the negative, but to focus on some positive. So think about ways you could give compliments to people. And then I think one good rule of thumb to help with the gossip piece is don't ever say anything about someone to someone else that you wouldn't say in front of that person. I think that's a good rule because a lot of people get confused. Like, well, is it gossip if I'm talking to my friend about, a situation that happened with someone else and I'm seeking their advice? I'm not really talking about them, but I'm seeking advice. So I have to tell them the story. And so what I would say to that is, even in that context, to be careful not to turn it into gossip or to use that as your excuse for gossip, is still be mindful of the words you say and what you choose and still think, I'm not going to say something to so-and-so if I wouldn't say it in front of the other person's face. So I just think that's a good rule to live by to avoid gossip because it's such a difficult element to relationships. It's such a fine line. So here are a couple of questions to think about today. Why do you think we gossip? What is the purpose? What purpose has it served in your life? I'm sure you all have been guilty of it. I know I have. Why do we do that, especially with our friends? Talk about that for a few minutes. And have you ever been hurt by any of these things of slander, gossip? Cursing, being called bad names is certainly not fun, but think about that for a few minutes. Have you been on the receiving end of that? Or would you admit, I've done that to other people and I recognize that's not something that honors God. And then also take a few minutes to say, a time that you remember someone that was kind and complimented you. And if you remember that and think about that and that it had an impact on you. So take a few minutes today in your group to talk about this idea of how important it is to guard your tongue. So talk about that now.